Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, we are taking another swing at a news roundup podcast. As always, I'm joined on these episodes by our assistant editor, Eamon McCarthy Earls. Hey, Eamon, welcome back.
Hi, Jason. Great to be here.
Great to have you. What do we have first on the lineup today?
Yeah, so a great place to start is the announcement that you've discovered from Vahé Torossian, who's been the Microsoft sales executive for the business applications group for some time, who announced that he is leaving after 30 years to seek a new role.
Yeah, he was leaving Microsoft overall after a real long time at the company, sort of rising through the ranks and establishing himself, I would say, as one of the trusted executives at the company. This was just his time in the business application space was just the last of several roles. And if you saw his LinkedIn post announcing his decision, there were people from, I would say, from what I could tell, across many of the different roles that he had held over the years who had worked with him or under him. He, I would say, was extremely quiet in sort of a public-facing sense, running the business application sales initiatives. I rarely heard anything from him, and when I did catch a glimpse, I tried to gain what I could out of it, but it wasn't all that much. He, is an executive type of person who speaks at a high level and doesn't give a ton of specifics outside the company. My guess is, his strengths in management and being sort of an executive type of role are probably a little harder to define or understand from the outside. So I would say, being that he put this announcement out on LinkedIn, you saw lots of praise and lots of sort of public, acclamations of, public voicing of support for him. And I think he made it clear too that he wasn't laid off, that he had planned this well ahead of Microsoft's layoffs that have been coming out in the last month or two as well. So I think he wanted to make that clear, and he's off to other adventures. But I think it's always useful to know when the business apps team is turning over, and it has. And I think in the article I pointed to some of the other past changes that have really kind of cycled the full executive team in a lot of ways, and we have different leadership now than certainly we did at the time that Torossian was appointed.
Of course, the early part of the year is also a big time from sort of an organizational standpoint to learn a bit more about Microsoft's latest plans for the year ahead, and there's no better way to find out about that than with the release waves. And so what was your perspective on the 2023 release wave 1 when that came out for D365 and Power Platform?
I mean, I wouldn't say it provides any surprises, and I think that's really the point of it. It's a big, a big set of plans. It's too much for really one person to kind of zero in, I would say. So I really appreciate getting a chance to see what other content creators, I guess you'd call them at this point in the biz app space, say about it. And it really speaks to, and so I think more than maybe in the past where, it gives you a little bit of sense of how public facing, community facing, content creation is done these days, is that you really could look across a whole range of media to see what people thought, everything from YouTube channels to podcasts to blog posts to, LinkedIn social media posts, other kinds of social media posts, to really get a sense of where people were looking and what they found interesting. I can't really even point to anything offhand here. I would say take a look at the two articles that we did. I think we'll link to one at least in the show notes, and then we had a second one for even more highlights. But I think some of them would be no surprise. People want to know what the latest Power Platform capabilities are, and then how those tie into the traditional Dynamics 365 biz apps. Seeing more of those Power Platform features within D365 apps, seeing things like Dataverse evolve, those are very interesting. And I think, and then, on the other side of it is trying to figure out sort of where things are stagnating. I think customer voice was one that jumped out at me as really offering very little in the way of new plans coming up. The ones that they did announce are really quite minor sounding changes, and that kind of gives an indication of maybe where things are losing a bit of momentum. And something to keep an eye on for the future. And then of course Microsoft always holds out a few key, maybe juicy details that they'll announce at a later time to drum up a bit more interest, as they get closer to launching certain things, or in timing with events that they're going to be participating in, things like that. So I think we'll still see a little bit more over time. My first takeaway was how quickly the community really did sort of jump up and start digging through all the details in these reports, in these plans, I should say.
Another great example of the way that you can find out about something from so many different perspectives is the sort of reaction to the Azure outage that took place in Southeast Asia, which affected D365 Business Central customers several weeks back. And in that particular case, evidently the issue was sort of a utility power surge, and certain servers had to be taken offline by Microsoft. But there was certainly a storm of reactions to that, even though it was a pretty rare fault and certainly a fairly short outage. But any kind of outage or change, much like any kind of update generally, certainly gets noticed by users and consultants alike.
Yeah, absolutely, and it really speaks to a few of the realities of this sort of public cloud SaaS-based business applications world. It's not unique to Microsoft. You can find examples of this from Oracle, from SAP, from really probably many other SaaS-based solution providers out there that, when something in the related cloud services goes down, it affects everything downstream of it. And Business Central is certainly downstream of Azure Storage, Azure SQL, compute, everything else. So networking. So that's really what happened here. And, we might very likely will want to revisit this topic, because as one Business Central expert I was talking to mentioned to me kind of informally is, the Business Central team themselves at Microsoft was largely sitting there, not able to do much to help the situation because it was upstream of their applications themselves. But like you said, when it goes to such a broad audience, I mean, people in the US who work on Azure resources related to Business Central were to some extent seeing downtime as a result of this. And it's always serious when a critical business application like an ERP that runs your finances, that processes critical business transactions like orders and sales and AP and everything else that makes a business move. If any of that gets halted for hours, that's a big problem for a lot of businesses. That's a really critical emergency type of situation. And even worse, and I don't think this happened in the Business Central case, at least I haven't heard of it, if ever data is lost in one of those downtimes when they're sort of recovering the systems, which actually has happened for other ERP providers even recently. So 30 minutes worth of transactions being lost is really kind of a nightmare for certain teams if that ever were to happen. So these are serious issues, and I think we haven't seen the last of it, and hopefully we'll be able to provide a little more perspective on that soon.
Absolutely. And really, I think the theme of how do you coordinate all these different moving parts, especially when so much is done upstream in the cloud these days, that is really a theme that I think a lot of experts in the field are thinking a lot about. Certainly, when I put together an event preview recently about an upcoming panel discussion by two members of the Microsoft team from, I believe, the Fast Track team, and one subject matter expert who sort of specializes in migrations, they had a lot to say about the kind of coordination process and migration process, generally speaking, moving from Dynamics AX to Dynamics 365 and all the ins and outs of that, many of which have kind of small scale elements of what you're just talking about with these big issues of uptime and making sure you don't lose data. They have a lot of great advice, I think, that will come out through this panel discussion, discussion of things like whether to leave your data behind temporarily as you go through migration, how to plan out the migration process and really ensure success in that process.
Yeah, it's always interesting to hear from Microsoft and their perspective on these things. I don't know if you got the sense in that conversation that now that sort of D365 is quite mature, and a lot of companies have gone through this kind of AX to cloud, on-prem to cloud ERP migration process with the fast track team, that they've really been able to hone some of their recommendations. Is that at all part of, did you pick up on that at all?
Absolutely. I've been covering the Dynamics 365 and Azure space for 5 years now, which I know is only a fraction of your experience in this area, but I remember conversations back in 2018, 2019, or even 2020 with a lot of subject matter experts in the field who would talk a lot about uncertainty and really not having defined processes yet. And that has sort of changed, I think, in the intervening time, where it's much more, as you say, sort of a mature offering now.
All right, very good. Well, why don't we move on to, when we were planning this, it occurred to me, you mentioned that event preview, and that was for a webcast, but we've also been previewing and looking into various larger scale events that are taking place in the next few months, I guess up through the spring. It's sort of the spring event season, which is now fully, I would say, back in action, last year and now this year, 2023 for sure. So I thought I could just run through a few of these, and we've done some coverage, we have postings, and we'll put some links for these. But the ones that are sort of on my radar right now include, and let's see, I tried to organize these hopefully by date. But so starting March 15th and 16th, we're going to be looking at DynamicsCon Virtual, which is their annual virtual event from the DynamicsCon community. It's going to feature tracks across all the Biz Apps and Power Platform, the Dynamics Apps Power Platform. That's all online, free to attend. And then I have here, Eamon, at least 4 events that we're tracking. That includes, well, let me start with the next one in the calendar, which would be, I believe, Directions North America. We'll be covering that event April 16th through 19th. So that's going to be in Florida. We also have Directions Asia 2023, which is in Bangkok, April 27th and 28th. We have some information on that on our site. We also have, heading into May, 2 events actually the same week. I'll start with a new one since it's really a premiering event. That is DynamicsMinds 2023. That's a brand new event. It's going to be in Portorož, Slovenia. A really lovely looking town I've never visited, but from the pictures I've seen and the way the hotel looks, it really should be an amazing location for an event. Again, that's May 22nd and 23rd. It's really a community event focused on bringing sort of community events back in Europe primarily, and so bringing people in that region on site for a couple days of learning and community building kind of activities. At the same time, in North America, there's going to be DynamicsCon Live 2023. So that's May 22nd through 25th. So that includes, again, a lot of user-focused events. There's also, they actually just added something that we're going to be involved in from MS Dynamics World, is a marketing professionals day at the end of the event. That's a sort of a separate add-on event. Certainly, we'll put a link to that, and if anyone has questions, they can even ask me about it. But that is DynamicsCon Live in May as well, and that's I believe in Arizona. So that's 5 events coming up between March and May.
And of course, I always recommend that our listeners go ahead and check out the excellent array of features that we're able to include on our site from so many different experts in the field. A few different ones I wanted to call out, which is by no means exhaustive from recent weeks, include a piece on empowering ISVs to build apps on Dynamics 365 by Agne Palanyan, if I'm saying the name correctly. Also, a really interesting piece on importing bank statements and carrying out bank reconciliation with D365 Business Central with data exchange definition from Cynthia Priebe, and some insight on financial tags for D365 Finance from Yogesh Kasat.
Yep, all great pieces and really wide-ranging, which is really wonderful to see from my perspective. So many different areas that people are contributing, and we have certainly more in the pipeline. But if you're listening to this and you ever feel inspired to develop a piece, definitely get in touch with us. If you just have an idea or you have something written, we really help people work on their articles from really any stage in the process. So we really do value that from the community and even from readers who want to sort of establish themselves a bit more as experts and thought leaders for their fellow community members. Great. Well, yeah, we'll post links to all those materials. Eamon, it's been good catching up with you. I think we're actually setting a new speed record here for a Roundup podcast episode, which is really nice. It's been fun as always. Anything else you wanted to add?
Well, I would just say for our listeners, you can reach me anytime at my email address, eearls@msdynamicsworld.com. We'd love to hear from you about Dynamics or Azure or anything else in the Microsoft Business Apps space. And until next time, I look forward to seeing where the market and the channel takes us from here.
Great. Thanks so much. Yep. And you can reach me, Jay Gumpert, at msdynamicsworld.com. And we will end it there. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.